Like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England. But elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
What do we want? Pay restoration! When do we want it? Now!
It's about time we globalise the Intifada! Where's the Labour front bench tonight? When are they going to stand up with the rest of the Labour movement?
Did Labour lie to us all about tax rises? And
you've been filmed going into the asylum seeker hotel.
I'm little Spanish.
But you're from Iraq, is that right?
Yeah.
Deport, deport, deport. Yvette Cooper vows to get tough on illegal workers. Plus,
and she has just been sentenced today to 4 years in prison. This means she will not be present at her brother's wedding next summer.
Good. Sorry, Cressida's mummy, but your daughter's an eco-criminal. Also...
No. Come here now! Come here now! Get there!
Keep running round this tree.
Labour announced new plans that could cause chaos in the classroom.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Does Kamala Harris make less sense than Joe Biden? On my panel tonight, it's Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist Benjamin Butterworth and ex-Tory party chairman Sir Jake Berry. Oh yes, and I want you to tell me what happens next here. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is Labour coming for your money? Next.
The top story from the GB newsroom tonight, the head of the US Secret Service has admitted that the attempt to assassinate Donald Trump was the most significant operational US Secret Service failure for decades. Kimberly Cheetle has been testifying today before a congressional committee in an effort to explain herself following the attempt to kill Donald Trump last week. She was being questioned about the security lapses that allowed a lone gunman to successfully take aim at Mr. Trump, saying she takes full responsibility.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed.
Meanwhile, financial donations to the US Democratic Party have surged after President Biden's announcement he's stepping down from the US presidential race. In an online statement released yesterday, Joe Biden endorsed his VP, Kamala Harris, as his favourite candidate for president, but the same endorsement was missing from the former President Barack Obama. It comes after he faced increasing calls to step aside since his poor debate performance against Donald Trump last month. Meanwhile, the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, one of the most influential Democrats in Washington, has now backed Kamala Harris's bid to become the party's nominee. She said her enthusiastic support for Kamala Harris for president is now official, personal and political. Meanwhile, the US Vice President Harris, on a statement on X, said, "Together, we're going to win this." And here in the UK, the Prime Minister praised the work of Joe Biden.
A man who, during 5 decades of service, never lost touch with the concerns of working people and always put his country first. A true friend of the Labour movement, his presidency will leave a legacy that extends far beyond America to freedom and security on this continent.
Well, the Prime Minister has also today set out plans to cut reliance on foreign workers by improving skills training in England. Skills England was a manifesto pledge from Labour and is designed to fix the fragmented and broken training systems in place. In a speech today, Sir Keir Starmer argued that a new approach is needed to reduce the need for immigration in key sectors. But the Conservatives have warned the plans to redirect cash could, in fact, cut the number of apprenticeships on offer. Now, also in the news today, an 11-year-old girl has been left orphaned following a crash which killed 4 members of her family, as well as a motorcyclist and their pillion passenger. It all happened in West Yorkshire. Shane Roller, his wife Shannon Morgan and their daughters Lily and Ruby died on the A61 near Wakefield when their Ford Focus was in a collision with the motorbike. A fundraising page has been set up for 11-year-old Poppy, who's been left behind. She wasn't in the car when it crashed. That has now reached over £75,000. The scene of the crash itself remains closed. Police investigations continue. And Superintendent Alan Travis from West Yorkshire Police said it's an absolutely tragic incident. Happier news now, and the Prince and Princess of Wales have shared a new photograph of Prince George to mark his 11th birthday. The image was taken by his mum, Princess Catherine, and posted on Kensington Palace's social media accounts. The black and white shot, if you're watching on television, you can see it now, shows the future king smiling, wearing a very smart white shirt and dark blazer. Happy birthday, George. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Are you ready to pay more tax? There are now big questions over whether Labour were honest with us about tax rises during the election campaign. We all remember Sir Keir Starmer saying this.
We will not raise tax on working people. No tax rises for income tax, for national insurance, for VAT. We will not raise income tax. We will not raise national insurance. We will not raise VAT.
It's the working people bit, I think, isn't it? But Rishi Sunak was adamant that that wasn't true.
It would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000. £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country. After all the hard work and sacrifice we've been through, that's not the right course of action.
So, last week, an independent pay review body said wages for NHS workers and teachers should go up by 5.5%. Well, the Institute for Fiscal Studies estimated that a 5.5% increase across all public sector professions would cost us about £10 billion. And Chancellor Rachel Reeves is hinting that she will do this.
At the moment, we are looking at those pay review body recommendations, doing the analysis, and we will work with public sector workers on that. But we also know that there is a cost to not settling, a cost of further industrial action, a cost in terms of the challenge that we face in recruiting, retaining doctors and nurses and teachers as well.
But this idea that Labour didn't know what financial position the country was in, or that the Tories have left us in the worst state since the war, are being rubbished now by ex-Chancellor Jeremy Hunt.
What is absolute nonsense is this business of the worst economic inheritance since the Second World War. I mean, you only need to look at the last time a government changed hands between parties in 2010. Compared to then, inflation is nearly half what it was. We had markets collapsing. Now we have the fastest growth in the G7. It's a very transformed picture. And I think the reason that she's doing this is that she wants to lay the ground for tax rises.
People called this, didn't they? They thought, OK, maybe Labour will get in. They'll say, oh, we've had a look at the books now. We've had a look at them. It's worse than we thought, and taxes will go up. So the questions are this, aren't they? Did Labour lie to us about tax hikes? And do you want to pay more tax to give public sector workers a pay rise? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. It's a good one. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. We've got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and the former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. Carol, I'll start with you. Do you think Labour lied to us about tax rises?
I think absolutely they lied. And I was just listening to Rachel Reeves there. I don't believe a word this woman says. She just said there's a cost to not settling. So what does that mean? Every time a union demands a settlement that we're going to have to pay because she's saying it's cheaper. Cheaper to who? You've just read out a figure there of 10 billion quid. That's what it would cost if she gives all the public sector people the pay rise that they actually want. And Reeves will not say where she's going to get this money from. She, Starmer said before the election that working people would not suffer any tax rises. But I mean, we just know this is nonsense. And I just want to come on.
I work. I work. I hope that I won't get any.
Exactly, I work too. And I just want to get on about what Jeremy Hunt said there. When she is absurdly putting forward this idea that our economy is the worst it's been since World War II. He touched on there. He said, we have the fastest growing economy in the G7. Our national output is projected to grow, or it has grown by 0.7% this year, which is the highest in the G7. And we have the lowest debt in the G7. How are we a financial economic basket case? I just don't understand. It's tosh, and he's right when he says she's done that because it's the preemptive thing before she puts taxes up.
Yeah, all right, Benjamin. So, I mean, people called this a mile off, didn't they? And now it appears to be happening, which is, we'll have to review the books. I mean, the books were actually publicly available, and it turns out, shock horror, they're going to say, well, this is worse than we thought it was, and we're going to have to renege on some of those promises. Oh, and this pay review body says that 5.5% for all public sector workers, well, we've got to give them that. Not because we're in the pockets of the unions or anything. We're just going to do it, and we're all going to have to pay. So did they lie to us about the tax rises, do you think?
No, I don't think they did. Rachel Reeves has said clearly that you cannot tax your way out of the situation we're in. We already have the highest taxes in 70 years from the Tories. And the truth is, the state of the UK economy isn't only poor since COVID, it's been poor for about 8 years. We've had anemic growth in this country that has put us way behind countries like the US. We're doing nothing like as well as they have in the last 3 to 4 years. And I think the truth is that, private sector wage growth has been between 5 and 6% for about 3 years now. And so the idea that the public sector has had less than inflation constantly shows that they have had a raw...
But they do also get... I mean, first of all, the thing is to say, Keir Starmer fought this election saying, I am going to put politics back in the service of the British people. What he's really done, he's putting the British people back in service of the trade unions, which is what the Labour Party always do. They, at the same time, let me finish, at the same time as in the King's speech, repealing every meaningful strike law, they have also made a statement saying, well, of course we're going to give you an above-inflation pay rise because there's a cost to a strike. Well, guess what? The unions will have heard that and go, right, you can't stop us striking now because you've rolled back nearly 2 decades of anti-strike law. Whatever we ask for, you're going to give it to us. And in the public sector, the reason that they've had inflationary pay rises, they get a gold-plated pension. They basically cannot be sacked no matter how bad they are at their job. And, you know, the deal always was you get paid slightly less, you get much better terms and conditions. The deal apparently now is we want to be paid more than everyone and have the best terms and conditions as well.
Because Sunak resisted the strikes by the doctors and the rail unions, that's why the cost of living crisis abated and inflation plunged.
Correct.
If he'd given them at the time, they would have carried on rocketing, and that's what this lot are going to do. And while at the same time punishing the wealthy and entrepreneurs.
The reason we had inflation incredibly high was not because of people's wages, right? And the arrogant lecturing from a Westminster insider like Mr. Berry, who has left public service employees in food banks because of how dire that they have had. Just sit here and lecture working people who can barely afford to put food on the table.
So head teachers, most head teachers in this country earn over £100,000. Now, if your head teachers in this country earn over, in secondary schools, earn over 100,000, I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't, but if you earn 30 grand working in a factory in Lancashire, why should your tax be put up so you can pay a head teacher of a secondary school 106,000? You may never earn that in your whole life.
They want to get working people fighting like rats in a sack. I want higher wages across the board.
You invoke the food bank argument every single time you talk about anyone in the public sector's living standard. It's just tosh. You know, we heard it last year about nurses using food banks. I don't buy that either, because what you don't hear when you hear about nurses and doctors, they get incredible pensions that are higher than anybody else's. We pay like 20% for every pound they earn, something like 20 pence for every pound they earn. It's outrageous.
What about the moral argument, Jake, that we all who can afford it, maybe, should be paying more money in tax to help people who are the arteries of this country, our public sector workers?
Well, I mean, what I think is a real disgrace is a senior nurse will now, because taxes are at a record high, you say about America's growth rate, by the way, they've got much lower taxes in the UK. I think how high taxes were under the Conservative Party was absolutely appalling. But what I find very distressing now is senior nurses are having to pay what, for most of my lifetime, has been the top rate of tax. They are paying 40% of tax. That now kicks in at 50,000. We are paying far too much tax already in this country, and you cannot have growth as your main aim as a Labour government and tax people. And then the final question I ask, which I think is really important, if public sector wages go up almost 3 times faster than inflation, how fast should private sector wages go up? Because you don't get your gold-plated pension. This will lead to out-of-control inflation, which is the real tax that will hit everyone with a mortgage in this country.
Benjamin, I will ask you this. What I wonder whether or not Labour have really factored in here is you look at people like Daniel Kabidi, who is the head of the National Education Union, OK? Now, this is a chap who is massively to the left of where the Labour Party at the moment, has attended, you know, the trade union kind of Marxist conferences, etc., as is, of course, his right to do that. But my point is this, which is that 5.5% is not going to appease this guy. No. Right, so you're going to start with 5.5%, and then the strikes start again, and you have to get more. Is this just where we're going to end up with? A cycle of pay rise, strike, bigger pay rise? Is this setting this in motion?
Well, what's so condescending is to try and say that paying people properly who've worked incredibly hard, who've had some of the toughest jobs in the last couple of years, teaching and health has been, you know, a complete mess for some time, that paying them properly somehow puts the government in the pocket of the unions. Let's look at the facts. You know, the amount of Labour donations that they got from the unions has never been lower. The head of Unite the Union, the biggest union in this country, she is not a Labour supporter, which is unprecedented in modern times. They are not in the pockets of the unions. What they're doing is trying to be in the service of working people.
Let's look at these facts. You've had a Labour government for 3 weeks. They've done an inflation-busting pay rise. It is putting the taxpayer in the service of the unions. It is completely wrong, and it's the opposite of what they said in the election.
Every single union now is going to go on strike because they know that if they do, they're going to get the money.
Correct.
And that's not going to happen. That's not
the right-wingers want you to be poorer.
OK, just very finally, I think this is a crucial point, and please be quick with this, Jack. Did Labour know the state of the finances before they came into power?
Yeah, of course they did. The Office for Budget Responsibility, which we brought in 2010, it publishes every year. It's just a con.
So, OK, all right. Thank you very much. A lively start. Right, OK, still to come. Leading Tories have turned on Suella Braverman as the Shadow Chancellor Jeremy Hunt makes his feelings very clear.
Well, in a two-party system in the UK, as we have, elections are always run from the centre ground.
OK, but Suella Braverman has branded people like him centrist cranks. I'm going to ask her colleague, Tory MP George Freeman, when he joins me live in the studio, what he makes of the Tory leadership fight. But up next, Labour's VAT tax raid on private schools could now start as soon as January. And Britain's strictest head teacher, Catherine Birbalsingh, says the government is about to eradicate progress on behaviour in schools. Apparently they want to strip back things like expulsions and exclusions. So, are they about to create a classroom spiralling out of control? Is this what we're going to get under Labour? Chaos in the classrooms. Head teacher Christine Cunniff goes head-to-head with fellow educator Bobby Seagull. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
A new report suggests that Prince Harry is lonely in California and he's considering returning to Britain despite a seismic falling out with his father and his brother.
But the question we're asking this morning is whether Meghan would come with her Prince Charming or whether Harry would perhaps be more welcome here if he came solo.
Like Kinsey, we'll go to Kinsey Schofield live now in LA. Kinsey, we've got lots of time to talk about this and speculate this. We've got about 6 minutes or so to talk. But what's behind all of this? Where are these thoughts coming from?
They're coming from royal author Hugo Vickers, and I don't know if you're familiar with Mr. Vickers, but he's written over 30 books about the British royal family. And he told The Sun that Prince Harry will ultimately return to the UK with his tail between his legs. He described the Duke of Sussex as angry and says Harry is genuinely petrified of losing his wife, Meghan Markle. When asked his predictions for where Harry and Meghan will be in the next 20 years, Vickers told The Sun, I think he'll come home, explaining, I think Harry will come home, and if he comes home, we must be very nice to him because he won't particularly want to. He's quite angry, suggesting that he would be coming home solo. Vickers also said that Prince Harry looks slightly petrified of Meghan Markle and that King Charles has left the door wide open for Harry's return if and when he does decide to come back.
I can only imagine the culture shock that Prince Harry has faced arriving there. This is a kid that has grown up in castles.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, is Jeremy Hunt right that the party needs to return to the centre ground, or is he a centrist crank, as Suella Braverman would say? We get the thoughts of former Tory Minister George Freeman MP. But first, will British classrooms spiral out of control under Labour? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Right then, so Labour's planned tax raid on private schools now looks set to be rolled out from January. 9 months earlier than expected, leaving private schools and the families that use them in the lurch. Meanwhile, head teachers are warning Labour against going soft on disruptive school kids. So, senior party sources now say that the government may consider scaling back expulsions and suspensions after they reached a record high. Well, Catherine Birbalsingh, who's known as Britain's strictest head teacher, fears that tampering with the existing stricter policies put in place by the previous Tory government could result in, quotes, more chaotic schools, tweeting, "I was never a Conservative, but I knew that what the Conservative Party was doing for kids was right. We are all about to find out what Labour policies are going to do instead. If Labour do what they say they will do to schools, disadvantaged kids will pay the price. The politicians will feel good about themselves, and all the gains that have been helped poorer kids over the last decade will be eradicated." So tonight I am asking, when you merge those two things together, will the classroom spiral out of control under Labour? I want to know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say, at GBNews on Twitter. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. But first, going head-to-head on this, our head teacher at LVS Ascot is Christine Cunniff, and maths teacher Bobby Siegel. Christine, I will start with you. So we've got two things going on at once here. Potentially more people, children, being moved out of the private sector into state schools, so bigger classroom sizes and then less discipline in those classrooms. Are we going to see a classroom of chaos under Labour?
I think we will do, because although they're basing their numbers on the IFS, even if 5% of the children came out of the independent sector, you're talking about 30 or 40,000 children. And I think it'd be much more than that. I think we're going to see about 20% be displaced. And therefore, where are the places for these children? And the only thing that can happen are larger class sizes. And we all know, I've been a teacher for 30 years, larger classes are much more, they're harder to manage generally, especially when you've got a lot of young people to look after.
Yeah, OK. Bobby, I'll bring you in now. Look, I just really don't see how they can make this work, right? Larger class sizes, which Emily Thornberry admitted to, and I think anyone with a brain can see is going to happen, with less deterrent for bad behaviour. I mean, make that make sense, Bobby?
Yes, I'll address both parts. I've been a school teacher for a decade now. So I would say in terms of the numbers, in the state sector, we're actually going to see demographically, there's going to be a 700,000 drop by 2030. So actually there are going to be spaces in state schools because demographically we're not producing enough children. So that's a separate point. But in terms of like the suspensions and expulsions, and again, obviously we need classrooms to be controlled environments. But what we've seen is while educational attainment for the middling people, middle classes, have probably gone up in the last 10 years, the reality is there's a bigger disadvantage between those at the top and the bottom. So I teach in a inner city state school, and we've seen that the poorest from the inner city states have actually gone further behind. And these are the students with the worst behavior, with suspensions, with expulsions. Actually, for them, education is not working for them. So I would rather try something a bit different. Again, the really tough, hard approach on them, for whatever reason, is not working. So I'm welcome as a teacher. Let's try something else. Let's see if we can actually get them to actually get qualifications rather than just suspending them and expelling them on a sort of vicious cycle. Because ultimately, these young people then, no qualifications, no employment, possibly into crime. So we need to try something else that makes them stay in the education system.
Christine, just on that then, so if Labour decides to go soft on expulsions and exclusions, which apparently are at a record high, do you think that would have a better or worse impact?
I think it'd have a worse impact. I think what the Tory government have done over the last 10 years to toughen up has been the right thing to do. And I think we've seen a decline in behaviour since COVID as well. And it really is something that we need to persist with. Now, OK, children should be in the classroom. They should not be expelled. But it doesn't mean that there are different learning environments for children. And I think we haven't got that right. And also talking about the number of places and the falling population, that may be in some areas of the country, but in the high-intensity population areas, that won't be the case, and there'll be long waiting lists for state places.
Yeah. Bobby, I just wonder, why do we always have to level down, right? So why is it always about, you know, oh, we need to do more to look after the kids who basically should have an ASBO? Or what about the children whose parents can no longer afford to send them to what was probably, you know, quite a middling private school anyway, where maybe they were spending every spare penny that they had in order to send them there? They then get lumped into, you know, scumbag comprehensive. They've got disruption going on all around them, and there's less discipline in the classroom, and those kids go under. Why does nobody think of those kids, Bobby?
So what I would say is, again, so my own experience, I grew up in a council estate in East London, went to a good comprehensive till 16 in East London. And I actually got a scholarship from A-levels to Eton. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum. What I would say is like 93%, maybe 94% of this country are educated in the state sector. And it's about trying to take small steps in a long journey towards having a more meritocratic system. And of course, I understand there'll be parents out there who are middle class, who are scrimping and saving, that this impact, the VAT measure, may impact them. But let's look at the big picture in terms of economics. So actually in the UK, the average household income is 32,000. That's the average total household income. And in fact, my students are probably lower than that. And the average private school fee is 15,000. So of course, I'm sure parents are doing everything they can to get those fees. But 15,000 is something that the majority of state school parents could never even dream of. So we're talking about parents.
Can I just, because they then pay for their children to be taken out of the state school system and put into the private school system, but they're still paying their tax. So they're still paying for other people's kids to go to school. If they then can't pay that excessive, arguably, fee for private schools now, and they just lob the kids into the state school system, then what's the benefit of that economically?
Yeah, so there's two parts there. Again, we all pay into taxes. You know, there'll be billionaires, millionaires. They don't need public transport. They don't need healthcare. But we pay because we think it's better to have a good society. But I would say on the wider point, again, there will be, in the short term, some parents who are middle class who are now not able to afford private school fees and send their children to state schools. I think actually, Patrick, that will have a good impact on our society, because now we're going to get really engaged, really involved middle class parents actually contributing to the local community. Rather than being in secluded private schools, they're going to be in state schools in inner city areas. So actually, I think short term they'll be paying, but middle to long term, I think this could be beneficial to our country.
I mean, I do wonder if there's quite a lot of quotes unquote middle class parents now who find that quite offensive, because I think they do already engage with the local community. There's plenty of them who will be local councillors. There's plenty of them who will be on the board of local schools. There's plenty of them who might actually even teach, dare I say, in local schools. But Christine, can I ask you, this impact of the actual fees going up, and this VAT raid, as it's being called, coming in January, which is what the noises are now. What impact is that going to have, do you think?
It's going to have significant impact. And I just want to go back to what Bobby said there. Bobby, I've also been raised in working class background. I came up in a comprehensive school. I didn't get a scholarship. Luck was on my side for a lot of my life. And a lot of my parents are like that as well. And they are scrimping and saving. These people do not have the money for this price hike. We're not talking about Eton and Harrow and Winchester here. We're talking about people who have two jobs, grandparents paying as well, remortgaging houses, really trying to do the best for their children, especially for those with SEND. Now, it was bad enough if we were going to have to look at this for September 2025, but to bring it in January 2025, I think is so misguided, because it's causing anxiety for a lot of people, including children. There are going to be children going into years 11 and 13 now with their parents not knowing if they can continue for that year as well.
Because this is a really good point. Sorry to interrupt, but it's quite a good point. Because what Rachel Reeves will say, or Bridget Phillipson will say, is actually you've had quite a while to get ready for this. They maybe made their intentions quite clear a while ago, and people should have got ready for it. Is that not true in your view?
No, it's not true, because I'll tell you why. Because what she said is schools knew this was coming in 2021. This isn't about schools. This is not a tax on schools. This is a tax on people, parents, who have already paid for schooling through their tax system. They are the ones being taxed, not the schools. And how many people would even look at, whether it's misguided from my point of view, would actually look at a manifesto 3 years before a general election when a lot of things are promised in manifestos, and as we know, they never actually come through. This is a very serious situation, and it's something that has not been thought through. There's been no engagement with independent schools. There's been, like with other sectors that are going to have tax hikes and VAT, there's been nothing.
Right.
Independent schools are not being listened to.
All right, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. So that is the head teacher at LVS Ascot there, Christine Cunniff, a maths teacher, Bobby Siegel. Look, who do you agree with on this, all right? Will British classrooms now spiral out of control under Labour? Dan on X says it's too late, they're already out of control. And Dan, I think you're probably right. If we're expelling or excluding or suspending record numbers of pupils, I mean, teachers aren't doing that for the fun of it, are they? It implies something, doesn't it? So, you know, by rowing back on that and keeping them in the classroom, then what deterrent is there to behave that way? Scrappy, ironically, on X says, schools need more teachers like Catherine Burblesay. Maggie on Your Say says, teachers will be leaving in their droves. There is already massive disruption in schools because of the lack of discipline at home. Well, yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether or not a 5.5% pay rise to teachers actually encourages more of them to stay. Your verdict is now in. 91% of you think that classrooms will spiral out of control under Labour. 9% of you say they won't. Coming up, could Kamala Harris return an even worse result than Joe Biden for the Democrats?
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
Good. Very soon, I'll also speak to Kelvin McKenzie about the riots that we saw in Leeds and why on earth that kind of stuff is happening in Britain. But next, Shadow Chancellor Jeremy Hunt wants the Conservatives to return to the centre ground. Suella Braverman has branded people like him centrist cranks. Who should the party listen to? I'll get the view of Tory MP and former Transport Minister George Freeman. Oh yes, and news just in. I'll reveal the date that the next Conservative leader will be elected. I have that for you. I'll tell you after the break.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier. A few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day, then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, Kelvin Mackenzie's waiting in the wings, and there's quite a lot to get stuck into there, including what on earth is going on in Leeds and why do we have to put up with that kind of stuff? But first, I'm joined by Tory MP and former Transport Minister George Freeman. And at the weekend, Suella Braverman and Jeremy Hunt went toe-to-toe over the future of the Conservative Party. So first, the former Home Secretary said that they risk becoming, quote, centrist cranks following calls for her to exit the leadership race. But the former Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, disagrees.
Well, in a two-party system in the UK, as we have, elections are always run from the centre ground. But I think the really interesting question is, what is the centre ground in British politics? And I think ordinary, decent British families want controls on migration. They want the government to show restraint on spending and keep taxes down.
So, I welcome George Freeman. Now, George, thank you very much for joining us. Should Suella Braverman quit the leadership race, as I think reading between the lines there, Jeremy Hunt would quite like?
Well, the joy of the leadership race is that everyone can put their hat in the ring and all views can be tested. I don't happen to agree with her language either. I don't think calling Jeremy Hunt a centrist crank is helpful. And I think Jeremy Hunt is right that in the two-party system, you have to win. If you want to govern, you've got to win a broad majority, and we need to rediscover the art of walking and chewing gum. And it's very clear to me that the centre of gravity of politics has moved to the right. And in my constituency, there are three really big things that came up on the doorstep over and over again. One, immigration. It's the first duty of a government to keep a country secure, and people are really rightly, understandably worried that we have, as a country, lost control of our borders. Secondly, NHS, people are fed up with us pouring more and more money in London and seeing less and less on the ground. Now, that'll require bold centrist reforms, but it's going to require big reform. And thirdly,
could also, with respect, and I think you're about to mention planning, yeah, I mean, with respect, all of that could be arguably sorted if we had not let immigration get out of control, right? You know, I mean, why do we need to keep pouring money into the NHS to accommodate more people? Why do we need planning reform to build a load more houses? It's because we've got more people. And I just wonder if the Conservatives realise that they lost a huge amount of votes to reform, right? So moving to the centre is possibly not a good way of bringing those voters back, is it?
No, so I'm not saying move to the centre. What I'm trying to argue is that unless we deal with the issues of the British public as they are, and understand why we lost so many people to reform, we haven't got a prayer of rebuilding the Conservative Party as the party of the centre-right. But I agree with Jeremy Hunt that if we want to govern, we've got to be more than just the party of the centre-right talking to itself. We have to speak to the legitimate aspirations of all sorts of people and ask ourselves, we're going to get into the leadership now. I want us to be asking ourselves in the next few months, why are so few young people voting for us? Why are so few small businesses voting for us? Why are so few people who work in the public services? You know, why are these people not voting for us? Not why does Suella Braverman think they're not? Why do they tell us they're not? And really understand properly how and why we've lost touch with key voter groups and then reconstruct out of that honesty.
OK, good stuff. Well, look, it's just been confirmed that your next leader will be elected on the 2nd of November. So that's the news coming out. It's the 2nd of November. We will know who the next Conservative leader and the leader of the opposition is. Is it wise to wait until after the party conference, do you think, in October?
Yes. And I'm delighted that we're going longer. I've been making the case we could even get through to Christmas. The truth is, what the public want to see us do in the next few months is signal that we've got it. Labour didn't just win this. We catastrophically lost this election. We were slung out unceremoniously. The first thing we need to do is signal that we get it. We get why. And rushing to a quick summer leadership contest is not the right way to do that.
I get that, but just to cut across you there, because I've got in front of me here that apparently your party risks being bankrupted by a long leadership race. Supposedly new donors are unlikely to come forward until the new leader is selected. Any thoughts on that?
Well, bluntly, I think if the Conservative Party was a business today, it's already pretty bust. I mean, the voters have left us, the funders have left us. We've got to go through a process of reform, rehabilitation and renewal. And there's no shortcuts. And if you shortcut it and pick a shiny leader next week without properly going through what's gone wrong, you'll just repeat the cycle. So I've been making the case to go long. I'm pleased we are. I personally think we're going to have to properly reform the Conservative Party, have a clause 4 moment, look at our constitution. It's not fit for the 21st century. We treat members very badly. I think we take their money, we spam them with emails. We don't really give them enough of a say, not just over the leadership, where actually I'd let them boil all applicants down to 3 and the MPs choose the winner. I'd reverse it. But I think we need to be a values-based organisation. And if we believe in opportunity, enterprise and responsibility, then why don't we build that into our constitution? Become an organisation that looks, feels and breathes like that. We feel, I think, rather bureaucratic and top-down at the moment. So no shortcuts, and I'm pleased that we're going long.
Yeah, look, I think that's really interesting, especially the way that you would maybe flip the succession process, as it were. But just on that, then, so former Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride, who we did see rather a lot of, didn't we, on the morning rounds during that election campaign, says that he is considering a leadership bid. Do you think he'd be a good choice?
Yeah, I'm delighted he's put his name, or he's considering putting his name in the ring. What I feared most was a knee-jerk leadership election where sort of somebody from the quote-unquote right and somebody from the quote-unquote left stands, and we go through the same old process, and the MPs pick 2 and the membership pick 1 and the MPs think they've got the wrong one. So I'm really pleased, and I hope we can go through a proper process with lots of applicants, and at conference I think give the party membership a chance to hear, all of us, to hear from all of them. And I would urge Mel Stride, if he's considering it, to put his hat in the ring. I think he's a serious senior.
So you're backing Mel Stride, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I want him to put his hat in the ring because I think he's a really classy candidate, and I do think that we're going to need to be very competent on economics very quickly, and we rebuild out of having a compelling economic narrative and vision. And I happen to think this government, for all the good tone of their new arrival, I'm not sure that they've got a really big idea for driving the economic growth we desperately need.
You think he might be better than, say, Priti Patel, who is also putting her hat into the ring?
Well, it's too early to say whether he's better, but I think he should definitely put his hat in the ring. And I do think his economic gravitas is very valuable. He was a very distinguished chair of the Treasury Select Committee during the pandemic. He's been an excellent Secretary of State in one of the areas that we've delivered big successes. So I really hope he does put his hat in the ring, yeah.
Just lastly, with you, this is just coming through on social media now, actually, which is, look, Nigel Farage has said that he expects several Conservative MPs to defect to reform in the coming months. Are you sensing that? Would you have a message for Nigel at all?
Well, Nigel Farage is an absolute genius at playing the insurgent. He's always got the ready criticism of others. He's never actually solved any of these problems. He's never been elected. So welcome to the House of Commons, Nigel, and I hope that he will get involved in helping us shape a centre-right coalition that can take on Labour. But I fear that he has a very different game, which is to become a celebrity critic and get a fast ticket to the White House. And I hope that my colleagues who are serious about building a serious Conservative Party, an effective opposition and a government in waiting, aren't tempted by the siren voices. We need to understand why so many of our voters voted reform in a very significant protest. But I don't think the answer is to lurch to follow them, because we'll follow them over the cliff. They're not a serious party of government.
All right, OK, well, your views there. George, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. It's George Freeman MP there. Right, so, coming up, Labour are seeking to deport illegal migrant workers in car washes and the beauty sector. Does this sound like a familiar policy?
I noticed a mushroom in barbershops opening up everywhere. This illegality is all over the country.
But are these really the types of people that we should be going after? I'll pose that to my panel. Before that, though, Kelvin Mackenzie, he gives his views on that matter, and we look at the fallout from these shocking riots in Leeds just a few weeks ago. And frankly, why do we have to put up with this stuff in Britain? Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress us, who enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, there's been a continuing rise in community tensions in Leeds over the weekend after riots spread on Thursday night. The disorder started in Hare Hills after social workers were met with, quote, hostility by the Roma community while dealing with a child protection matter. Police were then called and one of their vehicles was overturned following, massive riots in this. All set fire to a double-decker bus, all of that stuff. A man has now been charged with arson and violent disorder, while 5 others were arrested on suspicion of just violent disorder. Well, since those shocking events, police have been patrolling in the area on horseback to ensure there is no more civil unrest, but there has been a bit of it. I'm joined now by the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, why do we have to put up with this stuff in Britain, really?
Well, I'm not normally critical of the police, but I find it astonishing that this kind of rioting can take place in a poor area of Leeds, but Leeds, a major metropolitan area. We should be worried about this. Why didn't the police pile in? Why did the police not pile in? If this had been the United States and this kind of rioting was going on, you'd have the National Guard, you'd have the cops, you'd have the local cops, you'd have everybody and their wife there. Where were the police?
I just wonder, it begs a question, doesn't it? Which is that from what we can glean from, some of the people involved in the area, I don't mean any disrespect to the area when I say this, but, towards maybe the lower economic spectrum, dare I say it as well, potentially quite a few people, I imagine, who are on things like social welfare, etc., who might have come to this country and have been given things like a house and a place to live. And you just wonder, well, if they're going to really kick right off, it just makes you wonder whether there's a lack of gratitude, or is that unfair?
No, there should be gratitude. After all, the Roma community, we have the biggest Roma community in Europe, OK? They come here. Right, whether it's mainly London, and might explain why there are tents in the middle of Park Lane, for instance, but also in Leeds. It's the dominant providers of people in that particular area, and you'd have thought that if the social services have come around. I don't know whether the social services have been around your house. They haven't been around mine, right? Oh, that's a pretty rare thing to happen, OK? And on that basis, why didn't they just do what normal people would do? Say, what is the issue? Oh, we have got a problem over an explanation over a passport. Yes, we'll deal with that. Instead of that, the community then turns to violence. And honestly, it's disgraceful. But why have only 5 been arrested? After all, half of the social media in the world, everybody gets their phones out now. Nobody says, how can I stop this? They say, here's the phone. And then suddenly social media are live with all this, causing tremendous political uproar.
I just wonder if it's easier to just nick... Well, it is, obviously, for the police now. I think they view it as being it's easier to nick people
after the event.
But from certain groups of people who they think won't kick off. And again, it begs the question: well, if you do kick right off, then does that make you less likely to get arrested? Is that where we are? But there's a couple of other stories I want to get your views on. Labour are apparently talking about restricting MPs holding second jobs. So Lucy Powell, the leader of the Commons, is due to announce reforms this week that include an immediate ban on consultancy roles and fines for ex-ministers who breach lobbying rules. But fundamentally, Kelvin, should our politicians be allowed to have second jobs? Could be bad news for Nigel Farage, couldn't it?
Yes, it's shocking news for his bank manager, and also for whether he's got any money behind the bar somewhere. But the truth about the matter is I'm not entirely in agreement with this, to be honest. And they've already said that the Nigel Farages of this world are going to be allowed to continue broadcasting and write speeches and stuff like that. Of course, the thing about Starmer, of course, being Starmer the hypocrite, hello, good evening and welcome, he, of course, did work as a lawyer when he was an MP. So that's that out of the question. Now, on the lobbying side, I kind of get that. I kind of get that. But what about this? This isn't going to apply. Not going to apply to any Labour MPs. Nobody in their right mind would hire a Labour MP. You're running a commercial company, and the guy is an anti-capitalist. He's probably some rather dim person, and also, thirdly, and more importantly, is probably an ex-trade union official. Exactly the kind of person you don't want to be lobbying for. You don't want on the board. You don't want to employ them. So they know that this rule will not apply to one single Labour MP, but it will probably affect some Tories.
I suppose, OK, I mean, I imagine that Labour MPs will deny the fact that they're all dim, which is, I think, what you're into. But this would actually have quite serious consequences as well about the kind of person that might be attracted to it. It raises the question, doesn't it, about do you not want to try to attract the kind of person into Parliament who might be able to... And that's one of the laughable things I thought when they were chasing Nigel Farage around America going, why are you here? When he was there on, a couple of days a week. Anyone who really knows the way MPs operate is that they do basically naff all in Westminster 4 days a week. They're in the Red Lion pub by 5 p.m. most days anyway. They are not working for their constituencies the whole time. But quickly, on this, Labour are redeploying 1,000 members of the Home Office, apparently, to target nail bars and car washes, employing illegal migrants. We are going to be touching on this in the next hour, but what do you make of this? Do you think they're going after the right kind of illegal migrant here?
Well, as somebody who uses a nail bar, now I know it's...
Which end of your body is it? Is it the hands or the feet?
No, the hands, yes. The hands and the feet, actually. I'm so bone idle, I can't even be bothered to cut my own nails. How bad is that? OK, so the other aspects of it, of course, I go to another area they're going to be looking at, which is going to barbers, OK? And that's thought to be a lot of illegals in there. Now, going in there, this is basically, it's 22 quid to have my hair cut, which is £4 a hair. You know, there's not much going on there. But and the third point is the car wash. So I use all three of those, and I guarantee all your viewers will use all three.
So they're about to deport all the people that we use.
Yes, and but the people who are coming in, they say, who we don't use, they say, jolly good, go and live in that hotel or go and live in that free rented home over there. So, look, in France, by the way, which is incredible, they actually they don't allow car washes. Right, because there were too many illegals taking part in it, and that's probably what's going to happen over here. You're going to have to wash your own car. How bad's that? Washing your own car.
Oh, you're going to have to
very 70s.
You're going to have to cut your own nails as well.
Yeah, nightmare.
And trim your own hair. But there we are. All right, Kelvin, thank you very, very much. That is the wonderful Kelvin Mackenzie there, former editor of The Sun. Right, OK, well, I've got a lot coming your way in the next hour. Can Keir Starmer face down a rebellion over this two-child benefit cap? I've got two Labour supporters. Basically, I'm asking the question, should you be paying loads in benefits so that people can have loads of kids they can't afford? But next, Yvette Cooper has vowed to swiftly deport illegal migrants by raiding car washes and nail bars. Is the Home Secretary right to target those people, or actually, is that a terrible idea? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a westy split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier, a few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I won £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
you've been filmed going into the asylum seeker hotel.
I'm little Spanish.
But you're from Iraq, is that right?
Yeah.
Labour's new policy to deport nail bar and car wash workers sounds a little bit like this.
I noticed a mushroom in barbershops opening up everywhere. This illegality is all over the country.
But do you care more about migrant hotels? And
I think it's fair that you're in this situation now, considering a 13th child.
I don't make up the rules at the end of the day, and I'm not the government. If the government's going to give me those extra benefits, then I'm going to take them.
Should you pay benefits for people who want to have loads of children?
And she has just been sentenced today to 4 years in prison. This means she will not be present at her brother's wedding next summer.
Sorry, Cressida's mummy, your daughter is a criminal eco-fanatic. Lock her up. Also,
you think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
possibly. Is Kamala Harris less sane than Joe Biden? I've got tomorrow's front pages with Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist Benjamin Butterworth and ex-Tory party chairman Sir Jake Berry. Oh, yes. And what happens next here?
Free Palestine!
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Labour say do your own nails and wash your own car. Next.
At just after 10 o'clock, the latest GB News is that it's understood that Rishi Sunak's replacement as Conservative Party leader will be announced on November the 2nd. We've just learned that in the last hour or so. The party saying tonight the former Prime Minister will remain in post until that date. Nominations to succeed Rishi Sunak will open on Wednesday, the day after tomorrow at 7 p.m. and then they'll close next Monday at 2:30. Tory MPs will then narrow it down to 4 candidates. They'll each make their case to party members at the Conservative Party conference this autumn. Well, in news across the pond, the head of the US Secret Service admitted today that the attempt to assassinate Donald Trump was the most significant operational US Secret Service failure for decades. Kimberly Cheetle has been testifying before a congressional committee in an effort to explain herself following the attempt on Donald Trump's life. She was being questioned about the security lapses that allowed a lone rifleman to successfully take aim at Mr. Trump, saying she took full responsibility for what went wrong.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed.
Meanwhile, financial donations to the US Democratic Party have surged after Joe Biden's announcement that he's stepping down from the US presidential race. He issued it in an online statement yesterday and at the same time endorsed his Vice President Kamala Harris as his favourite candidate for president. The Clintons have also backed up that decision, although the same endorsement was missing from former President Barack Obama. It comes after he faced increasing calls to step aside after his poor TV debate with Donald Trump last month. Meanwhile, former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, as well as the Clintons, have backed Kamala Harris's bid to become the party's nominee. She said her enthusiastic support for Kamala Harris now, as president, is official, personal and political. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris herself has said in a statement on X, "Together, we're going to win this." And here in the UK, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, praised the work of Joe Biden.
A man who, during 5 decades of service, never lost touch with the concerns of working people and always put his country first. A true friend of the Labour movement, his presidency will leave a legacy that extends far beyond America to freedom and security on this continent.
Prime Minister speaking earlier on today. Well, the Home Secretary told the House of Commons earlier that the Rwanda scheme has cost the British taxpayer over £700 million. Yvette Cooper described the migrant deterrence scheme as the most shocking waste of taxpayer money she'd ever seen. She said she would take urgent action to start clearing the asylum backlog in one simple change that she said would save the taxpayer an estimated £7 billion over the next decade, and that after nearly 1,500 migrants arrived in the UK over the last week, crossing the English Channel. Just one last story for you. Ex-footballer Joey Barton is to appear in court over controversial tweets directed at female football pundit Eni Aluko. It follows an investigation by Cheshire Police, who said that the charges related to messages the former footballer sent between the 1st and 18th of January. If he's convicted, he could face up to 2 years imprisonment or face an unlimited fine. Those are the latest news headlines from the GB Newsroom. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Labour's Yvette Cooper vowed to round up and deport illegal migrant workers in car washes and the beauty sector. She said, "We have directed immigration enforcement to intensify their operations over the summer with a focus on employers who are fueling the trade of criminal gangs by exploiting and facilitating illegal working here in the UK, including in car washes and in the beauty sector. And we are drawing up new plans for fast-track decisions and returns for safe countries." Well, coming after the nail bars and car washes, forgive me, but doesn't that sound a little bit like a Reform Party policy?
Notice the mushroom in barbershops opening up everywhere, or the candy shops, or the car washes. This is all illegal money laundering of money from drug dealing and from other heinous crimes and activities. This illegality is all over the country.
Look, we know that places like cash-in-hand car washes are hotbeds of illegal immigration, don't we? As our Home and Security Editor Mark White uncovered.
Excuse me, sir. Can you speak to us? You're an asylum seeker?
Yes, boss. Sorry.
You've been filmed going into the asylum seeker hotel.
I'm little speaking English.
But you're from Iraq, is that right?
Yeah.
By doing lightning immigration raids on car washes and nail bars, Yvette Cooper is hoping to avoid scenes like this outside a migrant hotel in London.
There's an individual being carried into a police van here. Shouts of "shame on you."
And she's banking on the fact that many of these people may come from countries like Vietnam and Eastern Europe, where we could conceivably send them back relatively easily. Now, it's all well and good going after dodgy nail bars, car washes and barbershops, but with more than 1,500 people crossing the Channel since Labour came to power, and Labour offering them all the chance to claim asylum here, is it actually going to make a blind bit of difference? I can't help but wonder if it's a way for Yvette Cooper to say she cares about stopping illegal immigration without actually doing anything to stop illegal immigration. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. This evening is Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and I'm also joined by the former chairman of the Conservative Party. It's Sir Jay Berry. Carol, I'll start with you. Do you think this is going to make a blind bit of difference when it comes to stopping illegal immigration? Is it a bit of window dressing from Yvette Cooper?
Yeah, and the thing is, what are the optics of this going to look like? Are they going to go charging into nail bars and lift young Vietnamese women and drag them out of there? Is that what they're going to do? So they said Rwanda was cruel, sending people to a safe country for processing, but they're going to drag people out of the workplace, drag them out of car washes, and then presumably deport them. I mean, this is just tosh and nonsense. It's as you said 1,500 have come. The figure tonight is 2,000 have come since Labour came into power. Already there's immigration chaos. There's another story breaking tonight saying that 70,000 the migrants that were earmarked for Rwanda are going to be given asylum in this country. Now, this kind of repeals the Tories' Illegal Migration Act, where if you came here illegally, you couldn't have asylum. So now we're going to have this. And also Starmer's been in talks with Europe, with Mrs Maloney and with Macron. He wants to take a quota of 100,000 every year in exchange for them not coming across on the boats. Well, we're already paying France millions to stop them coming across, and they're still coming.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll see about that quota. Benjamin, it is actually essentially a Reform Party policy, this. And I just wonder whether or not there's a bit of hypocrisy here when it comes to the Labour Party. Because, they would have absolutely hammered Reform for this. They would have hammered the Tories for doing this. And now they're just saying they'll do it and everything's fine. The civil service probably won't have a problem enforcing this, will they?
I mean, I think you just sound quite irrational, because if Farage said it, I can't imagine you were criticising him just a couple of weeks ago when those remarks were made by him and Richard Tice.
I'm talking about the hypocrisy of it. I'm talking about whether or not now the civil service will find a way of facilitating the deportations for these people and the processing of them in a way that one could never have imagined they would do under the Conservatives.
No, it's not hypocrisy. It's having a sensible government that isn't bound by ideology for the sake of it. And what I would say...
They won't deport them. We saw Starmer stop the deportation of foreign criminals from this country. He was dead against it.
What I would say is that, there's clearly some very dodgy shops. London, central London's full of these weird sweet shops with no customers, right? All across the country you see it. The answer is ID cards. It would make it so much more difficult for any of these people to get work, for employers to get around employing illegal immigrants if we had ID cards in this country. And every Home Secretary finishes their time in office and says, yeah, actually, I think that would have helped.
All right, OK. Jay, the words decking and Titanic come to mind.
So, look, this is a conjurer's trick. This is saying, look over here, we're going to be really tough on immigration. We might deport literally a few thousand people who we arrest, and they probably won't deport them anyway, while at the same time rolling back the illegal migration bill, effectively creating an amnesty for 70,000 people who came to this country illegally, chucking their passports overboard, creating an amnesty and getting rid of Rwanda, which was the only deterrent we had. And you're right to say 2,228, I think, have come over since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Let's put that into context. That's 15% of all people this year have come in the last 3 weeks. What were they waiting for? They were waiting for a Labour government. They were queuing up in Calais. Whether Rwanda was gone, they could come into this country legally and claim asylum. All of these deterrents have gone. And over here, there's a conjurer's trick, which Yvette Cooper wants us all to look at. It won't work. It's dishonest. And it's just typical of the Labour Party, who are just going to let everyone in.
Jake is totally right. They will not deport anybody. Starmer has said in the past that he actually believes immigration laws are racist. So Labour has no interest in controlling immigration because they don't say anything wrong with it. They're quite in favour of it, which is incredible.
Well, it'd be interesting, though, won't it? Because on that point, I did wonder this, whether or not it's less racist to deport people to Vietnam or to parts of Eastern Europe than it is back to some Muslim countries or parts of Africa. And I wonder whether the optics of that is something that Labour are prepared to do.
Well, but the reason that they're talking about Vietnam is because that's seen the sharpest rise in people coming here
There's also
through
quite
boats.
a lot of people there who are working nail bars.
And so, right, but I mean, look, the audacity of you to talk about that. The fact is we had an amnesty by default because the system was so poorly run that you had people sitting in hotels for 18 months, working illegally in these places.
But this doesn't stop that, does it?
They weren't going anywhere under what the Tories are doing. And just to point out, apparently we spent £700 million on the Rwanda scheme, and both boat crossings went up 10% in the first 6 months of this year from last year.
Can I just say on that, there was a point today that I thought was quite interesting that Yvette Cooper made in the House of Commons, where she said that the Conservatives had planned on spending £10 billion on Rwanda in the coming years. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you have a look at what the IFS is saying that it's going to cost us for the public sector pay rises, that comes to £10 billion as well.
Exactly.
And I just wondered if she might be rolling the way.
But we need to start being honest. First of all,
I wish you would.
We should say there's no such thing as an asylum seeker from France. They are not fleeing persecution in France. They are economic migrants to this country. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, which I think we've got to be really straight about, is as long as we keep housing people, giving them benefits, giving them access to the NHS, giving them access to NHS dentistry, they are going to keep coming. Unless we deal with what we call those pull factors, Britain is a soft touch and people will come. And then finally, just to focus on Starmer's deal with the EU to allow legally 100,000 plus asylum seekers into the UK every year. Let me put that into context for you. That is the same as creating a city the size of Carlisle every single year and filling it with asylum seekers. The British public, whoever they voted for at the last general election, did not vote for that.
Look, we'll end up seeing probably at some point a picture of Yvette Cooper with an immigration enforcement...
Having her nails done.
Next to an immigration enforcement van and, you know, them saying, well, we shut down this nail shop, fine. But I do wonder whether or not people are more concerned about the amount of people coming across the Channel, the migrant hotel situation, where those people are going to live, and is this policy going to make any difference to that? I'm not sure, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? We will have to wait and see. But coming up, I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. I'll bring you... will this person be the next president of the United States?
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
My pronouns are jog on. But next, will Starmer cave to the backbench rebels over the two-child benefits cap? I'm going to explain next why that actually really does matter to all of us, and then two Labour voices will thrash it out. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Still to come, I'll bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But first, a backbench rebellion against the Prime Minister is gathering pace. So Labour's Rosie Duffield has now slammed Sir Keir Starmer's refusal to scrap the two-child benefit cap as, quote, overtly sexist. Well, the cap was brought in by the previous Tory government in 2015, and it limits the amount of benefits payments to a couple's first 2 children. Scrapping the cap would cost an estimated £3 billion a year, but charities say that 300,000 children then would be lifted out of poverty and 700,000 would be in less deep poverty if it were dropped. So women's rights champion Rosie Duffield has now blasted Starmer from the backbenches, saying the obvious target is the caricature of the feckless, irresponsible people who drop children every few minutes without being able to pay for them. But the subtext is altogether more sinister. It's an attack on women's right to choose how many children they have. OK, well, then, just this morning, amid mounting pressure, Women and Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson said that the government will, quote, consider scrapping the two-child benefit cap after all, paving the way for another Starmer U-turn. There are very much two sides on this, aren't there? There is the side of, well, don't have kids you can't afford. Then the other side is, you know, is that humane? And actually, we do have a declining birth rate, don't we? Well, I'm joined now by former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon and Labour activist Susie Stride. Thank you very much. Jeff, should Labour reconsider this position? I mean, you know, why should other people pay for people who have loads more children that they obviously, by definition, can't afford?
I'm sure in principle Labour would like to make this change because it is something that a lot of Labour MPs will have campaigned about. They recognise the damage done to third and subsequent children by not having the benefit available to the parents. So I'm sure it is something that in principle all Labour MPs would want to do. The reality is, as you mentioned, it costs £3 billion. The government do not have £3 billion in their back pocket at the present time, and it's sensible, therefore, to wait to look at the financial situation and determine this when it can be afforded in the national interest. OK, Susie, what should we do here? We've got £3 billion of a cost. Loads of people having kids just willy-nilly, I suppose, after this, you know. I mean, I know that we've got a declining birth rate, but would this just send a message to say, look, you can keep pumping out children and someone else will pay for them?
I think this is, again, just another really complex subject, isn't it, where there isn't this clear-cut answer. You know, ultimately we have, and we've inherited the finances that we've inherited, and that means we can't do everything we want to do in the first 3 weeks of government. You know, I'm massively for scrapping it, but at the same time, I'm also realistic that we've got the economic situation that we have. And so I think in the third week of a Labour government, you know, this is not something we can do right now. At the same time, I don't think you can't call yourself Labour. And, you know, I agree with what Jeff's just saying there. Look, you know, it's children. We don't want children to pay the cost, even if it is, you know, even if, you know, a parent was making the wrong decision there, you know, whatever the parents is going on with the parents, the point is we're talking about children. However, I think ultimately we have to work within our means at the moment. And I think and I also believe in supporting our leader. And, you know, Keir Starmer, I believe in our leader and whether our leader's that on this.
I just wonder whether or not Labour has a bit of a blind spot here, Jeff. You know, how can they claim, you know, if there's some of the backbench MPs, you know, claim to really care about kids? Oh, it's all about the children, this. And then simultaneously be perfectly happy to dump a load of children into the state school sector and, you know, potentially ruin their education as well. But on this, does it show a bit how divided the Labour Party actually is? I mean, there are a sizable number of Labour MPs who would want to scrap the two-child benefits cap, you know, even right now. Is this going to be a problem for Starmer?
I don't believe so, because I think, as we've just heard, the reality is this is 2 and a bit weeks into a new government. Everyone is finding their feet. They're looking at the financial details in a way that isn't possible when you're in opposition. So going into the Treasury...
Sorry, Jeff, just on that. It is possible, though, isn't it? Because you got the OBR, you got everything. I mean, I don't think there's really any details, are there, that Labour are now aware of that they weren't aware of before the election?
Well, I think the other difference is that in government you have the resources of hugely expert Treasury civil servants available. Certainly in opposition you have the red book, you have the numbers, but you don't actually necessarily have the levers to pull that can make things happen. And
you're not in power, yeah, OK, but you are aware of everything. That's the point. This notion now that, oh, gosh, you know, look at this, we're only just becoming aware of these figures that have been publicly available to absolutely everybody for however many months now. I'm just not quite sure that adds up. Susie...
Let me try and explain, Patrick. I had 5 years in opposition before 1997. Going into government in 1997 was a revelation. I think Tony Blair has pointed out that even he didn't realise the way in which it was necessary to operate in government. It is a completely new and different experience for people, most of these ministers have not been ministers before. That was the situation for us in 97.
Fine. Susie, can I ask, why should people, maybe like me and maybe like quite a few people watching and listening now, pay for somebody else to have children they can't afford?
I mean, there's a bigger picture to this, isn't there? And I just wanted to say the bigger picture also is there are different ways of tackling child poverty, and that's really important to say that. You know, whether it's investing in schools, whether it's investing, you know, in mental health support in schools, you know, whether it's, you know, bringing down energy bills, there's a bigger picture to actually how we tackle poverty. You know, I work frontline with some of the most, you know, poverty-stricken kids in East London, and I can tell you for a fact there's lots of ways of tackling poverty. The question you just asked, look, there's a bigger picture there. Look, I believe that we are better when we are more equal. I believe that we are better than if you're born in Poplar or you go to a school in Eton, that you have same life chances. I think we're better as a country when that happens. But that to happen, it means we believe in redistribution. I don't mind paying a little bit more. I earn a little bit more. I've had a little bit more privilege in my life. I got to Cambridge. I did actually work quite hard to get there, but I don't mind. And I don't mind actually that I give a little bit more in my local area and I play football with local kids and maybe they've not got that support at home. But for me, that's about kindness. That's about actually believing in that bigger picture that we're a great country. And what makes us great is that we believe in serving and caring for others. But you're also right. That doesn't mean that there isn't also a tough side to that. And I think Keir Starmer is showing that. And I think that is important.
Well, we'll have to watch this space, won't we, really, and see how we go when it comes to whether or not there is a massive rebellion over this two-child benefits cap. But, I mean, you kind of add that to what we heard earlier today about the public sector pay rises. You know, the potential there for that to cost us £10 billion. If you add another £3 billion to this, it's going to be tricky times ahead for Labour. But both of you, thank you very, very much for that. I was former Labour Minister Jeff Hoon and Labour Party activist Susie Stride. Coming up, have the Democrats just made a bad situation even worse?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Maybe somebody did. My panel decide if Kamala Harris has what it takes to beat Donald Trump. But next, get ready for the liveliest paper review that you will not get anywhere else on national television. The front pages have just been delivered. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier, a few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Let's have a first look at tomorrow's front pages, shall we? The Mirror. She's lost her world. Girl 11 orphaned as her mum, dad and sisters die in crash. This is a family car crash horror, unfortunately. There's also the front page there of Strictly, It's War. Insults, yet more accusations. It's really going back and forth, including, by the way, actually, some male celebs who have come out to say that their female professional dance partners abuse them. So this is not a one-way street anymore.
But you know, today, the BBC actually, and insiders have strictly said that Amanda Abingdon is stirring this up. I mean, this is victim-blaming, surely. They're blaming the woman who was abused, who claims she was abused, and is...
with respect, it's also potentially, which is, will I just politely say, one of the reasons why I have not gone massive on this topic so far. It's also potentially...
It's because you want to go on Strictly.
Right, can I just say, yeah. Can we come back to me? Yeah, fine, right. I want everyone who books Strictly now to see this. I'm happy to offer my service.
To be abused.
I will happily go on Strictly Come Dancing. I will be there. Sign me up. I am all yours. I will dance. I did ballet until the age of 8. My mum made me.
All right, that's enough.
And there was a nice ice cream shop on the way to the ballet. So if you're looking at hire me for Strictly, happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Can you imagine the dance pro that gets in? Can you just imagine?
The lucky woman?
No, it's not lucky woman.
If you want to be abused at work, I'm sure we can arrange that.
Yes. She'll give you a smack.
All right. Another front page news. The Metro. Democrats surge behind Kamala, yes, there we go. Yes, she can, they say. Oh, all right, well, remains to be seen. The Anointed. This is the eye now. Surge in donations and support for Kamala Harris in Democrats' quest to stop Trump. Let's go to The Guardian. Senior Democrats throw weight behind Harris to take on Trump. OK, fine. Well, apparently, Kamala Harris is currently in Delaware, where Biden is, you know, definitely still clinging on, and she's there to say something, presumably like, oh, well done for everything, Joe. I'm joined now by my press pack, as ever, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, former chairman of the Conservative Party, Sir Jake Berry. We are zoning in on madness that's taking place across the Atlantic. After being endorsed by Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris looks set to replace him. She spoke for the first time since Biden stepped down in a speech at the White House earlier this evening.
Our president, Joe Biden, wanted to be here today. He is feeling much better and recovering fast. Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already, yes, you may clap. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office.
Is that true? Interestingly, it's been reported that Sleepy Joe delayed stepping down as he doubted the abilities of Kamala Harris. But look, what could he possibly be so worried about?
We did it. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
Yeah, no, right, give her the job. Just give it to her. OK, Carol, should we be worried? I mean, well, you know...
I think she's going to be as big a liability as Biden. The Democrats are obsessed by identity politics. They either think that because she's a woman of colour, she's going to be a walk into the job. No, she isn't. As far as they're concerned, in their little work world, she might be. In the real world, I don't think she's that an attractive a prospect. And it was only all these Democrats now that are saying she's going to save the party. A couple of months ago, Biden thought she was a drag on the ticket. So they were all talking about how they could dump her. They went through all the Constitution to see how they could get actually shut of her, and they found out they couldn't. So they're talking. So now the woman they wanted shut of, they're saying she's going to be fantastic. She's not very good. What has she done in the past 4 years? The one job she was given was to stop the people flooding across the Mexican border. 10 million of them in recent years. She didn't want to get her hands dirty. She didn't want to get involved in that. She's done zilch else. And I mean, have we heard a peep out of it here in the past 4 years? We've heard nothing about what she's done. She's achieved nothing.
Also, to be fair, we've not heard a peep out of Joe Biden for quite a while.
Well, we know we have, but it's all been a bit muddled.
Letter, but, you know, anyway, that remains to be seen, doesn't it? Benjamin, Kamala Harris, presumably you're bang in favour.
Well, first of all, it's Kamala, like comma.
No, it's Kamala.
It's not.
It's not Kamala.
No, it's really not. If you listen to the audiobook of her memoir, she explains it's Kamala like a comma.
Right.
So Kamala Harris, and I think...
What were you saying?
Kamala.
Oh, Kamala.
But I sometimes get away with that stuff because I'm northern. So it's like when people go, it's Bath, actually, and I go, no, it's not, it's Bath.
I mean, we're from the same town.
But now we're from the same town, so it's difficult. But carry on.
But look, I think she has a real chance because if you look at what's happened in recent years, you had... when women's reproductive rights have been on the ballot, the pro side has won every time, quite exceeding the Democratic support. And she has been the face of that campaign. You know, they've chosen J.D. Vance, a vice presidential nominee for the Republicans, a guy who says that he's against birth control, against abortions, even for victims of rape and incest. And so I think that will really motivate people to support Kamala.
Look, what actual credibility does she have when becoming president, do you think?
Well, look, the great big lie at the centre of this was this lie that the Democrats put out that Joe Biden was fit and well. Yeah. When they were briefing that he was effectively he was so fit he was almost doing cartwheels through the Oval Office while doing a complicated calculus math problem in his head at the same time. That same team who were saying how fit Joe Biden were briefing out to the American press pack, Kamala Harris is useless, she's failed on the border, she's lazy, Joe Biden doesn't trust her. Now, of course, all of that's changed because Joe Biden's stepping down. But the question I'd ask myself if I was an American voter is, how bad must Kamala Harris be if the Democratic Party thought that someone who, as far as I can tell, is losing their memory, would be a better president than Kamala Harris. How bad must she be for Biden to be better?
But you think, do you not, that they will just maybe make her president?
Yeah, so look, so there's a few ways they could do this. It's funding rules are very complicated in the USA. The Republican Party and the Democrats have two different sets of rules. The Democratic Party rules say that if you don't have either the president or the vice president and you've been fundraising for them, you have to pay all those donations back. That would effectively bankrupt the Democratic Party, with or without the surge of donations they've had in the last 24 hours. So I could see a situation, if Joe Biden isn't fit to be the presidential nominee at the election, you could say he isn't fit to be president. I actually think that's true. I could see in the next week or so him stepping down as president, her stepping in, becoming the first black woman president of the United States, a good thing in and of itself, at which point she would automatically get the Democratic nomination to be the next president, and all of their funding situation would be safe.
But isn't it naive of the Democrats to appoint someone on the basis of their gender and their race rather than merit and ability? Because her record for the past 4 years has been pretty shocking. She hasn't done very much. And she really is not liked among the top aides in the White House. They don't like her. They think she's useless. And John Sopel did something small where he said he was talking to someone who was very high in command there a few weeks ago and said, how's she doing these days? And he said, well, she's a bit better. He said, but that doesn't mean anything.
I mean, look, I think
we talk about Hunter Biden here, or
I think the real conversation we're having, which Democratic candidate is going to lose to Donald Trump, because I don't think this changes the outcome of the American election. Donald Trump is still a dead cert to win in my
I think they were, if you look at the Republican conventions, at Republican politicians, they weren't saying they wanted Biden to step down because they knew they had a better chance against him. So I think they'll be pretty annoyed that this has happened. And you talk about her race and her gender, her sex. Look, those are two things that the coalition of Democratic voters rely on, and turnout is going to be much better from having her. So that improves the chances. I'd also point out that the US presidential candidate that's won with the biggest shortfall of votes in the popular vote was Donald Trump. The US presidential candidate that's lost by the most votes is Donald Trump. So he lost by 3 million in 2016 and he lost by 8 million last time. So he's got to turn around an incredible number of people to do this.
He's delighted about Kamala Harris. He was really scared about them putting a younger book in there, someone who was really good. There's a few names I'm not going to about, but he was not scared about her. He's very happy.
I don't think the answer to the problems of an octogenarian is to stick another one in there.
Well, he's not an octogenarian yet.
We'll have to see. I'm not sure. I mean, look, I'm not sure Kamala Harris is the answer. I'm not sure what the question is if Kamala Harris is the answer.
She's not going to get in.
But anyway, now, they do say a week is a long time in politics, so maybe the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, can be forgiven for this gaffe in Parliament today.
In relation to the particular point, the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposite, old habits die hard.
I suppose that's taking the term uni party to a new level, isn't it, really, there? But anyway, yes, coming up, yet more allegations in the Strictly Come Dancing bullying scandal, but this time against two female professionals. We touched on it a bit earlier on. We'll revisit it. We have that in the latest Greatest Britain Union Jackass. But next, Just Stop Oil eco-criminals were sent to prison for around 4 years, and one of their mummies isn't best pleased.
She has the courage of a lion and a moral compass that compels her to step forward when she sees wrong.
Yeah, and a whopping great big prison sentence and a criminal record as well. That clip and the rest of tomorrow's front pages are coming your way very, very shortly, including a couple of interesting ones on the front pages tomorrow by immigration. So don't go anywhere.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
Well, I'm joined now by royal biographer and former royal photographer, Ian Lloyd. Ian,
hello, Jacob.
Thank you
good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great, isn't it? The opportunity to go around and see where the King comes onto the balcony from. Really interesting insight to how Buckingham Palace works.
It's exciting. I went yesterday, there was a press preview, and the thing that struck me first of all is that if you're the King and or the late Queen and you're on the balcony, you can't see the Mall. I mean, we all see people coming down from the top, thousands of people crowding in towards Buckingham Palace. They can't see it because of this great monument to Queen Victoria called the Queen Victoria Memorial, or they call it the wedding cake, but it blocks the view. So apparently the king has a TV in there, and the late Queen did as well. So what they do is they when they're waiting to come on, they're watching the TV to see how the crowd's getting nearer the palace. And the other thing that struck me is when we were on it looking down, is you can actually see individual faces in the crowd out there, because we looked out, so they do get a good view of what's happening directly underneath the palace,
So they can see individuals. So if there's a friendly face in the crowd, they can see that person and possibly even wave. But they can't see that enormous mass of people you get at the big events that goes back towards Admiralty Arch.
The other thing I learned is there's a great historical link, because the person that put the east wing on the palace, because it was originally 3 sides, and Queen Victoria had, of course, 9 children, so they had to build a 4th side for all the nurseries and things. Edward Blord was the architect, but the master builder was Thomas Cubitt.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. It's time to revisit the liveliest pay-per review anywhere on telly. Let's do it. So, the Times front page. Donor dollars pour in as Harris promises victory. Ugh, grief. Right, the Daily Telegraph. Coronation for Harris as rivals step aside, they say. We've also got the Daily Express. Farage. More Tory MPs will soon defect to reform. So that's his front page. Let's go to the Independent. 700 million to send just 4 people to Rwanda, excuse me, and they volunteered to go as well. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper slams the Tory flagship migrant policy. There we go. There's the same front page, basically, on the Daily Mail, saying now Labour opens the door to giving asylum to 70,000 people. So there we go. Those are the entirety of your front pages. I am joined as well by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, and former chairman of the Tory party, Sir Jake Berry. Look, let's just discuss about this 700 million quid to send just 4 people to Rwanda. It's on the front there, and also actually the Daily Express's Farage, more Tory MPs will soon defect to reform. Jacob, we'll start with you on that. Is that true then?
Well, I don't know if it's true, but it wouldn't surprise me if it were right. Nigel Farage stood at the last general election on what was basically a Conservative Party manifesto. He did remarkably well. They got lots and lots of votes, spread quite evenly over the country, so it didn't convert into lots of seats. So Nigel Farage is basically espousing many of the values that appeal to Conservatives and Conservative MPs. So I wouldn't be amazed if some of them moved over. No, I wouldn't, because I am a Conservative. I've been chairman of the party. I don't think the Conservative Party needs to become reform, but by gum, it needs a heck of a lot of reform to try and turn it back into a proper Conservative party. If there was a merger of the 2 parties, not something being negotiated by me, I could see something like that happening in the future. I wouldn't.
Can you see that happening, really, with Farage being involved?
Well, who knows how long Farage will be head of...
You don't think he'll stay with
I don't think he'll stay as leader as that long. I think they have plans of bringing maybe new faces on, which could be leader. Look, the maths are this simple. 5 million, I believe, people voted for the Reform Party. If we don't find a way to make them either vote Conservative or bring those 2 voter blocks together, we have a Labour government forever. And that's certainly something I want to see not happen.
Would Farage come to the Tories?
I don't know, you'll have to ask now. He's got a show on GB News. He should text in.
I'm asking you.
Come in at 7 o'clock, you'll find out.
All right, OK, right, now. Just last week, yes, that's right, 5 Just Stop Oil protesters got sent to 5 years in prison for bringing the I'm going to start that again. So, just last week, 5 Just Stop Oil protesters got sentenced to 4 and 5 years in prison for bringing the M25 to a standstill. I've never been good with numbers. So you might remember this ringleader, 22-year-old Cressida Gethin.
We are currently on a gantry above the M25. It's very loud up here, it's very windy. We've dropped a banner over the edge, securely tied, that says Just Stop Oil.
Yeah, so Cressida, you had your protest and now it's time to take responsibility for your actions. But Cressy's mummy has decided to speak out. She's not happy that her little girl has been sent down.
Cressida grew up in the countryside and is one of those nature-loving defendants that you've heard about. She is an extremely talented musician. She worked hard growing up. She achieved highly. She has ambitions, dreams, and hopes, like all young people. She had just finished her first year at university. She has the courage of a lion and a moral compass that compels her to step forward when she sees wrong.
I mean, it's not hard to see where she gets that whopping great big sense of entitlement from, is it? She even had the gall to complain that Cressy would miss her brother's wedding. Well, here's some of the harm that she caused by blocking the M25, all right? And this was actually read out in court. Missed flights, missed funerals, school children missing exams, somebody suffering an aggressive form of cancer missed their appointment and was forced to wait 2 months for another one. So, excuse me, Cressy's mummy, if I don't bring out the teeny tiny violin. Your views on this, Carol? Cressy's mummy.
Well, the judge has sent them down. There's a guy called Chris Hay here. He's my hero, this guy. He's the first judge that's had the guts to do this. And he's done exactly what the British people have wanted to see for a long time. Because I'm sick, and I'm sure a lot of people are, of seeing these protesters go to court, get a smack on the wrist, come out, punch the air because they're not going to prison. Well, now they are. And I mean, you read out some of the things that particular protest did. It cost multi-millions. It cost the cops millions of pounds themselves from their own budget. They endangered life, you know. They're perfectly entitled to endanger their own. But one of those could have fallen off a gantry into a car and caused a massive pile on the M25. So, you know, endanger your own lives, but don't endanger the lives of innocent motorists and other people. Yes, it's right. But you know what? Under this Labour government, Cressy's mum shouldn't worry because she'll be out on the streets in about 5 months' time.
Well, we'll see, won't we? Benjamin, you know, Cressy's mum there. Your thoughts?
Well, you feel for her because she's a mother and she clearly has a talented daughter. But, you know, when paedophiles and rapists aren't even getting 5 years in prison, you wonder whether it's justifiable to put a peaceful protester to take up one of those spaces.
It wasn't peaceful. That was not peaceful protest.
It was peaceful protest. Even the Daily Mail called it peaceful protest.
It was not peaceful.
You know, apparently we've got space for peaceful protesters talking about climate change when serious criminals are getting out.
So the only thing I've got 3 kids and I actually really felt for her. It was a heartfelt speech that she was making, saying, I'm really proud of my daughter despite the actions she took and despite getting this criminal record. I think if I was that parent stood up there, I would actually be stood there thinking, what could I have done to stop this? What was my role in this?
Exactly.
You know, the parent known to her at some point in her life.
Correct.
You know,
correct.
I should have instilled some discipline in the home or something.
Yeah. So on a very personal level, you've got to feel really sorry for her parents, but actually, you know, bit of self-awareness, maybe they should be thinking what responsibility they are.
I wouldn't ever do something like that, genuinely, right? And I am, as every single person knows, by no means perfect, right? At all, far from it. But one of the reasons why, even if I felt really strongly about that I would not do something like that is because I wouldn't want to hurt my parents.
Yes.
She obviously doesn't care.
Yes.
She obviously doesn't care.
But it looks like they share that belief in social justice and the same outcome of wanting to stop a climate disaster. And I think, you know, that's probably a proud mother. If you went back 100 years, there were, you know, women that were putting themselves in these situations, and I suspect their mothers were proud. If you go back 50 years, there were gay rights activists doing very similar things, and they remembered...
Yeah, but the difference was that women didn't have the right to stand for Parliament. So Cressida could have stood for Parliament, could have said, I'm going to be a Just Stop Oil parliamentary candidate. We actually saw a lot of Greens elected at the last election. You know, that is used in the political system to change things.
She can make friends with Insulate Prison, can't she? Who are in there as well now, I think. But
how well are prison cells insulated?
It's very interesting. There was a study out recently that said a lot of these activists, they're actually narcissists. They're not in protesting for altruistic reasons. They're in it for selfish reasons.
I think we wouldn't sit on telly for a living, shouldn't lecture about narcissism.
We also wouldn't want Cressida's mum to come for us in court ourselves, would we? So, defamation of character. Anyway, time for today's Greatest Britain Union Jackass.
Oh, right, OK.
Carol, who's your greatest Briton?
Oh, hang on a second. Do his and come back for me in a second. I know who it is, but I can't pronounce... Oh, I've got it. OK.
Oh,
so my greatest Briton...
I feel like we worked together.
But I couldn't pronounce the name that I chose them because these
Camilla.
The identical twin sisters. You probably never heard of them. I hadn't until yesterday. Lena and Lavia Nielsen. They're two 28-year-old identical twins. They are some of the fastest runners, they're two of the fastest runners in the world, identical twins. Both are hoping to bring, they're expected to bring gold home from Paris. But what makes these sisters even more unique is they both have multiple sclerosis. And they both suffer bouts of it now and again. But look at that's them. Look at these two girls. They're incredible.
Remarkable. It's a remarkable
and they're
story.
in Paris this week. And if you don't give this Greatest Britain, I will never forgive you for this. Because actually, these are two people who deserve it. They go around representing Britain in pain.
The gold medal for longest explanation goes to Karen.
Shut your face. And you can talk.
Go on, quickly.
Well, mine's easy. It's the greatest US president we've had. He's an honorary Greatest Britain.
Oh, for
it's
goodness
Joe Biden, who has saved the world, saved America, been a great friend to Britain.
Do you know what? He won't even remember you sucking up to him. That's the really distressing thing about this. Right, my Greatest Britain.
Carol,
because you just got married. Now.
Come on, here we go. My Greatest Britain, Prince George.
What's he done?
Get away.
Well, first of all, he's in line. He's third in line to our throne.
Yeah.
He's 11 years old. That's I'm a boy. That's really more for boys.
Birthday.
But if you think about the huge challenges he's had this year with the cancer diagnosis for his mother, to still be up there having a nice pic taken, still be in the public eye, I think he deserves some praise.
Today's winner of the Greatest Britain are Lena and Lavia Nielsen, who are going to bring home the gold for Great Britain under incredibly difficult circumstances. Well done. Right, now we're bang out of time very quickly, Karen.
Right,
You need
Royal Parks, which is kind of the beautiful Albert Memorial in Hyde Park, is highly offensive because it reflects a Victorian view of the world. Of course it does, because it was built by Queen Victoria to commemorate her husband Albert in the Victorian era. Funny that. I'm sick of these people making us apologise for history.
There it is. That's the thing that apparently is deeply offensive. Right, OK, go on.
My jackass is BBC's Strictly Come Dancing, not just because of the allegations about inappropriate behaviour, but because it looks like the BBC knew this for a long time and ignored it, and that's just out of order.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right, New Green MP Colin Denyer, who is also one of the co-leaders, they can't even make their mind up who the leader should be, put out a tweet claiming that Joe Biden was been an amazing president, to then immediately put out another tweet to say, yeah, but I don't really like him that much because he's mean to people in Palestine. And also, with all of her green credentials, she has been caught out opposing new electricity pylons in her constituency, which would help with the green industrial revolution.
Lovely stuff. Well, all of them would have been worthy winners, but I've gone for the Royal Parks. I'm sorry. I just thought that was one that I was like, oh, come on.
Exactly.
But anyway, right, well done, everybody. Thank you for a wonderful show, everybody. Really enjoyed it tonight. And thank you, more importantly, everybody who's been watching and listening. Take it easy, people.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier. A few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day, then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible, and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 o'clock, you're with GB News. And the top story tonight, it's understood that Rishi Sunak's replacement as Conservative leader will be announced on November the 2nd. The party itself said tonight the former Prime Minister will remain in post until that date. Nominations to succeed him will open the day after tomorrow, Wednesday, at 7 o'clock in the evening, then close next Monday at 2:30 in the afternoon. Conservative MPs will then narrow it down to 4 candidates who will each make their case to party members at the Conservative Party conference this autumn. Now, news from the United States now. The head of the Secret Service there has admitted that the attempt to assassinate Donald Trump was the most significant operational US Secret Service failure for decades. Kimberly Cheetle has been testifying today before a congressional hearing in an effort to explain herself following that attempt to kill Donald Trump last week. She was being questioned closely about the security lapses that allowed a lone gunman to successfully take aim at Mr. Trump, saying she does take full responsibility for what went wrong.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed.
Meanwhile, financial donations to the US Democrats have surged after President Biden's announcement that he is stepping down from the US presidential race. In an online statement yesterday, Joe Biden endorsed his VP, Kamala Harris, as his favourite candidate for president, with the Clintons backing that up, although the same endorsement was missing from former President Barack Obama. That comes after Joe Biden faced increasing calls to step aside since his poor debate performance against Donald Trump last month. But I can tell you that within the last minute or so, Joe Biden has joined a Kamala Harris campaign event in Delaware. The vice president just flying to Delaware within the last couple of hours to meet her campaign team. And he has come through on a phone and he has addressed the people meeting at that event, saying, I know yesterday's news was surprising, but it was the right thing to do. So for those people wondering what is happening to Joe Biden, there's certainly a great number of theories that are being published online at the moment. If you're watching on television, the pictures from Delaware. It is poor quality, those pictures at the moment. We're waiting for that signal to stabilise because it is just a staff meeting at a campaign HQ in Wilmington in Delaware, so it isn't really what you call broadcast quality, but we're just looking in on that campaign meeting to tell you that Joe Biden has spoken over the phone at that event, and if you're watching on television, you can see that now Kamala Harris herself has taken to the stage to address staffers there. Well, it's also important to mention that the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has also swung in her support behind Kamala Harris, as well as, of course, Bill and Hillary Clinton. They've backed her bid to become the Democratic Party's nominee. She said her enthusiastic support for Kamala Harris for president is now official, personal and political. Well, Kamala Harris responded earlier on today, saying, together we're going to win this. Here in the UK, though, in the House of Commons today, the Prime Minister said that Joe Biden had been an asset to the United States.
A man who